Okay, good evening, everyone. Chag Chanukah Sameach, Chanukah Allegra. We are going to continue and finish up the laws of Mikveh for new kelim, for new pots and pans, etc. And we're going to begin tonight by talking about chatzitzot. Now, chatzitzah is something which is interpositions, it says here. It's something which invalidates tefillah, and it's something which needs to be removed. And it could be dirt, it could be rust, but more practically for us, it could be a label. Often you get those sticky labels on new pots and pans or new plates, and whether you need to remove those stickers or whether it invalidates, does it invalidate the mikveh, going to the mikveh because the label's still there or the glue is still on there, or is it not a problem? So the Gemara says here in Masechet Nida Samach Zayin Amud Bet, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Devar Torah on a biblical level, Ruba Hamakpid Alav Chotzetz. If the dirt or whatever this chatzitza is the person, it's on the majority of either the person or the thing which is going to the mikveh, and the person is bothered by this thing, chotzetz is considered a chatzitza. However, rubo ve'eno makpid alav, but if it's on the majority, but the person doesn't really bother that person, then it's not considered a chatzitza on a Torah level. Gazru, our rabbis made a gezerah, al rubo she'eno makpid, mishum rubo hamakpid. But our rabbis said, rabbinically, it's prohibited if it's on the majority, even if the person is not careful about it, because of the majority and the person does care. And similarly, gazu al mi'uto hamakpid mishom rubo hamakpid. And if it's on the minority of the pot, the plate, or even the person, and the person is careful about it, that too, we're going to make a gezerah from the majority is covered and the person cares. So I've now got two extra things. Says the Gemara, V'ligzo nami al mi'uto she'eno makpid. Should we also include if it's on the minority and the person doesn't care because of mi'uto hamakpid, because the person cares and it's on the minority? Says the Gemara, no, we don't do that. He gufa gezerah. We've already made a rabbinic decree for minority and the person cares, from majority and the person cares. And says the Gemara, ana nikum v'nigzor gezerah l'gzerah. Shall we establish and make another fence to a fence? No, we don't do that. We can make a rabbinic fence, but we don't make a rabbinic fence on top of a rabbinic fence. Now, this is very clear in this chart. And it says here, on a Torah level, it has to be majority, and the person has to be makpid. The person has to care that it's there and that's bothering him. On a rabbinic level, we add it's on the majority, and he's not care. He's not interested in it. And also, we said if it's on the majority, it's on the minority of the vessel, it's on the mi'ut, and he is careful about it. But in the fourth box there, where it's neither he cares and it's also on the minority, that is not even a rabbinic issue. The Shulchan Aruch makes this halacha as follows: Kol davar shederech lahakpid alav chotzetz v'im lav eno chotzetz ela im kain hayachofeh et ruba. Any substance about which one is particular interposes, but if not, it does not interpose unless it covers the majority. And the Rama adds, the black stains that are stuck to the pot on the outside are considered as part of the wall of the utensils and are considered the usual manner and are not considered a chatzitza. The Shulchan Aruch in the halacha of Tevilat Kelim stresses that ideally, lechatchila, one should try to remove any stains or other foreign materials on the utensil prior to Tevilah, regardless of how small or insignificant. However, if one did not do so, the status of the Tevilah is subject to the rules discussed above, which is, and he says here, one needs to remove the rust before the immersion. If one did not remove it, if one is particular about it, it is considered chatzitza. And if one rubbed and put it on the coals, and there still remains a little bit of rust that cannot be removed in such a fashion, this is considered a minority about which one is not particular and is not considered a chatzitza. The Sefer HaKashrut says this is the general rule. Any chatzitza that is found on the minority of the surface area of the utensil, and most people are not particular about its presence, including the owner of the vessel himself, one may immerse the vessel with the chatzitza. However, lechatchila, one should remove even such a chatzitza. Therefore, in our scenario, such as stickers and labels, etc., ideally, we want to remove that as much as possible. But if a small amount is stuck there, it would not invalidate the mikveh process. Okay, there we move on. So one does not need to lose any sleep about labels and stickers. Again, we want to try and remove it, but if, for example, we thought it was removed and it wasn't, it would not require going to the mikveh again, because it's on the minority of the plate or pot, and we're not careful about such things. We're not makpid about it. Now we've got a Mishnah in Masechet Mikvaot. It says, "Ha'ochez be'adam uvekelim umatbilan tmein v'im hidiach et yado b'mayim tehorim." If one holds a person or utensil and immerses them, they remain impure. But if one wets one's hands in water beforehand, they are purified. What's this Mishnah talking about? It's talking about the situation where you're holding it on so tight that the water cannot get between your fingers and the part of the pot or the plate. So therefore, he gives you an out. You need to put water on your fingers, or you need to hold it loosely. If you hold it loosely, as the Shulchan Aruch is going to codify here in source 12, then that also is fine, because if you hold it loosely, the water can get in between your fingers and the bowl or the plate, whatever it is. He says here, "Tzarich shehei hakeli rafui biyado b'shat tevilah." The vessel needs to be held loosely in one's hands at the time that it goes in the mikveh. She'im mehatko biyado habe chatzitza, because if you're holding it on too tightly, it's considered a chatzitza. Ve'im lachlach yado b'mayim techila, but if you washed or moistened your hand at the beginning, and lachush, then we don't have to be concerned. Okay? The Sefer Hayashar says that this is the Rabbeinu Tam, one of Rashi's grandsons, that one must make sure to immerse the entire utensil in the mikveh at one time. And that's why it's good to have a large mikveh kelim. And he says here that the reason why you want 40 se'ah, so that one's entire body can be immersed in it, and not half. And that's just as a person needs to go in completely, so too we want it that the vessel can go in completely. The Pitchet Shuvah notes that concerning this point, Tevilat Kelim differs from Hagalat Kelim. Tevilat Kelim is immersing in the mikveh. Hagalah is when is the kashering the utensil in boiling hot water, which we'll see next time. And he says here, the Pitchet Shuvah says, here, we'll read this one in the English here. He says, the Sefer Chochmat Adam by Rab Danzinger writes that one needs to immerse the entire vessel in the water at one time, so no part will remain outside, even a minute amount. If it is too big and one cannot immerse it all at once, it appears to me that it is prohibited to immerse it in partial stages, similar to how it is prohibited regarding a woman who needs to have her entire body immersed to be purified from nida for her mikveh. And this is not comparable to Hagalah, where the purpose is to extricate the embedded prohibited substance. And once the half has been extricated in that place, it has been extricated. However, here is due to impurity, and since part of it remained outside the water, the impurity returns and spreads throughout the entire vessel. Okay. The Shulchan Aruch notes that not only the primary portion of the utensil must be tovelled all at once, but the handles must also, as he says here, tzarich lahadbil yadei hakeli. You have to also put the handles as well. And the Sefer Tevilat Kelim adds that one need not take apart the handles, rather one simply immerses the utensil with the handle at one time in the water. As it says here, you don't need to dismantle the handles, or other parts of the vessel, even if they are not made of materials that require going to the mikveh, let's say they're wooden handles or plastic or whatever. Rather you immerse them as they are attached, connected to the vessel. Dinam keguf hakeli, shetzarich liyot naki b'lo chatzitza. However, the style is like the rest of the vessel that must be clean without any chatzitza. Shulchan Aruch here in source 17 writes concerning an impure utensil, a kli tameh, into which one placed other utensils and then immersed them all together, the immersion is kasher, even though the mouth of the vessel is very narrow, since the water enters through it, and since the immersion is valid for the big vessel, it is valid for the other vessels in it as well. If one tilted it on one side and immersed it, the immersion is not valid unless its mouth is as wide as the tube of a wineskin, a shoferet hanod. Similarly, if the vessel was pure and one placed it in impure vessels and immersed them, the immersion is invalid unless the mouth of the vessel is the width of shoferet hanod, the tube of a wineskin. The Darkei Moshe writes that even if the opening is smaller than the requisite amount, one may still fill it up with water from the faucet, and when one immerses, the water will be made to come in contact with the mikveh, and the tevilah is effected through the mechanism known as hashaka, literally kissing. And you can see that there. Daha demutar latbil keli she'en bepiva keshoferet hanot. Hainu shemileh hakeli mayim techila afilu she'uvim umahane ayde neshika aval belo mayim lo alta lo tevila. Okay, and he says it there. However, without any water, then it wouldn't work as a kosher immersion. Now, what's the beracha for going to take something to the mikveh kelim? The Mordechai cites the Rashbam, who mentions three different opinions. Look at that, not one, not two, but three different positions as to the correct text of the bracha. He writes the Mordechai, one of the Ashkenazic Rishonim of Germany, Katav HaRashbam, Tiyesh Levarach Alehem Al HaTevilah, V'yesh Mevarchin Al Tevilat Kelim, V'yesh Mevarchin Al Tevilat Keli, or Klei Matachot, sorry. So I've got here al tevilat kelim, and some say al tevilat kalei matachot, on the immersing of metal vessels. So which one do we use? Says the Shulchan Aruch, following the Torah, it's the second position. Yevarech al tevilat keli, if it's one vessel you're immersing, v'imhem shnayim or yoter mevarech al tevilat kelim. The Aruch HaShulchan explains that the text of al tevilat kelim was preferred by the Shulchan Aruch, since we do not generally mention a type of material subject to the mitzvah and the beracha, plus the words ala tevilah are too general and could refer to the immersion of a nidah, which is the more classic case of tevilah. And therefore, we want to be specific, tevilat kelim, not tevilah of a woman going to the mikveh. Okay, says the Aruch HaShulchan, and there he writes it there. The some say to recite Atilat Kalei Matzachot, but this is not the accepted opinion. Firstly, for we are not commanded to immerse glassware as we have written. Furthermore, in all blessings of mitzvot, we do not mention the details of the mitzvah. Now, one should not say that if it is so, why mention vessels at all? Because you want to distinguish between women who are going to the mikveh after nidah and putting in kelim. Now, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach notes that if one tovels a pot together with the lid, this is considered one utensil and not two. Therefore, one still recites the bracha of al tevilat keli, as he says here, hamatbil mechaseh im sirah, אף על פי דלפעמים משתמש במכסה של כלי אחר, יברך על טבילת כלי, even though sometimes you can use a different lid for a different part, לא יברך על טבילת כלים, you don't make the bracha על טבילת כלים, דמסתבר דחשיב כלי אחד, because obviously it's considered one utensil. Now, let's get into the tevilah for electric utensils. This comes up a lot. Does this need mikveh? Does this not? Okay. And we're going to present ourselves with the first approach, which is the approach which I recommend, which is it is exempt from tefillah. Okay, I could actually just stop the class now and we're done, but I thought it'd be important to go through all the shitot. The Sefer Kashrut says, Yesh de'ot hasovrot, there are some opinions who hold, shebelam hacheh kle hashmali patur me'tefillah, that any case an electric appliance is exempt from immersion. Why? Mishum sheshimusha rak b'sha'a shemechubar lechashmal, because its use is only once it's connected to the electricity, plugged in. V'nechshav kemechubar lekarka, and that's like it's still attached to the ground. Okay, if we look at source number 5, this opinion holds that since an electrical outlet is affixed to the wall of the house, which is considered part of the ground, then an appliance that must be plugged in to work is also considered to be attached to the ground. Therefore, it too has a status of the ground itself, and thus cannot have the halachic status of a movable utensil. Consequently, it will be exempt from tevilah. The Shevet HaLevi, Rav Wolzner, rejects this strongly. And he says, Al yish'acha libecha lahatir, do not allow it into your heart to sway you to permit, based on the one who wishes to say that since it's attached to a plug to the wall, it is considered mechubar lakarka, attached to the ground, and is patur from tevilah. Why? Because in my opinion, this is nonsense and baseless, and it is questionable to say that an actual utensil that is detached from the ground, that is then attached to the ground through a plug, should be exempt from immersion. And it's obvious to us that according to the halacha, this is not called mechubar, attached in this context, to exempt it from immersion, and there is no need to elaborate about this anymore. Rav Asher Weiss suggests that perhaps electric utensils are exempt for a different reason, and the halacha would not impose an obligation that would ruin the utensil. And this is the thing. By putting an electric utensil in water, it could well damage the utensil, and no doubt may even void the warranty on it. Says the Minchat Asher. נראה לכאורה דכלי שאי אפשר לטובלו בלי להשחיתו, פטור מן הטבילה לגמרי ומותר להשתמש בו בלי טבילה. It would seem that a utensil that cannot be immersed without destroying it is entirely exempt from immersion, and it is permitted to use it without immersion. Okay, and this is a very practical reason. Most people do not hold by its mechubar lakarka, which was brought in Sefer HaKashrut. Rather, they hold by this position of Asher Weiss that if it's going, this is a threat, or possibly it would break, that one would be lenient in this matter. Approach number 2 is, and you've got to be really handy, and this would be something which I would be lousy at because I'm not very good with my hands, is you can dismantle it and then repair it. And by you dismantling it and repairing it, you're now part of the essential process. And therefore, once you own it and you've fixed it, it's as if you've made a new Kelly. And therefore, now it's a new Kelly and you fixed it, it doesn't require mikveh. So it says here, concerning large vats in which beer is cooked, it seems to me that they require tevilah. And even though one fixes them and attaches them to the ground, nevertheless, they have the status of a keli. And it seems to me that there is no rectification to permit using them until they are immersed, or one punctures a large hole in them so their status as utensil is abolished, and then a Jewish artisan repairs them, Baz Yitaken Uman Yisrael. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach agrees with Ahmad Adam and suggests the same idea can be applied to our case of an electrical appliance as well. And he says here, concerning electric appliances, one may combine the opinion of those who say that they do not require immersion in any case, because since the primary usage of the utensil is only when it's attached to the ground through the electrical outlet, it is called Mikveh Karka. He brings that one. And combined with such a disassembling where one abolishes utensil from its usage and it is only usable if a repairman fixes it, I believe that it can be exempted from immersion in that manner. So either you can combine the mechubar lakarka, that's still when you plug it in, plus dismantle it and fix it, and then it would be exempt from needing to go to the mikveh, or you can say, as I said before, since it's going to go by to Rav Asher Weiss, that since it needs, you're going to ruin the warranty, and you could possibly even break it. Therefore, you don't need to go to the mikveh at all. Approach 3: transferring ownership to. Hello.
Yes, I got a question. How
Sure.
much of the utensil do you need to dismantle in order to fix in order to make it patur l'tevilah? Because I once heard somebody say that all you need to do is take out one screw and then put it back in.
No, so it has to be something which is going to stop it from working. So if you know how, again, you've got to be a kind of a minor electrician. And if you know how to stop it from working by unscrewing something, it's not going to be an external screw. I think it has to be something more significant than that. So if you know how to do that, you can go. But as I said, the main position is that Rav Asher Weiss position, which is since it's going to be a problem of you could ruin the warranty or worse, it doesn't need to go in. Or you can rely again on that mechubar lakarka, that being plugged in is enough. The third approach which one can do is transferring ownership to a non-Jew. And this is brought down, Rabbi Akiva Eiger says, that a utensil that's too large to tovel, and you can't break it because the whole thing has to go in its entirety, as we saw before, well, that's going to be hard. So how am I going to get around something which is very large? Rabbi Akiva Eiger says that he quotes the Knesset Hagadolah, which is a Sephardic Acharon, a Rav Benvenisti, actually from Turkey. And he writes that one can inquire about the following. Our large earthenware barrels that are covered with lead, in which wine is placed, in which mikveh should one immerse it. The waters of the mikveh are certainly not capable of containing them due to their size. And I found a manuscript responsum of the sage, our teacher, Rav Yisrael Zavi, that the only solution is through a loophole. Alitei harama. And what is that harama they're going to do? Giving them to a non-Jew as a matana and then borrowing it from them. As we learned before, if you're only borrowing it from the non-Jew and you don't own it, if you're borrowing it or renting it from the non-Jew, then you don't need to Immerse it because you don't own it, and since you don't own it, you didn't buy it from a non-Jew. That's another way of getting around it. This is what's known as harama, finding a halachic loophole to get around it. Hacham Ovadia and Halichot Olam adopts a solution as the preferred one practically. He likes this more so than what we've suggested so far. And he says concerning a kumkum chashmali, an electric kettle, that will be ruined if it is placed in the mikveh. One may give it to a non-Jew as a gift and then borrow it from him. Since one who borrows or rents new utensils from a non-Jew is patur melahat vilam, from immersing them, as was discussed last week, since he did not acquire them to be his. And this is not similar to the incident with utensils of Midian, where the utensils belonged entirely to the Jews, because they wiped out all of the Midianim. Now, approach number 4 is don't say it's mechubal karka. Don't say you're going to break it. Don't say that, what did we say here? Don't say that you're going to take it apart. Don't say you're going to borrow it, give it to a non-Jew as a gift and then borrow it. Rather, we're going to immerse them anyway. How's this going to work? He says, Kelim hachayivim b'hatvila u'metukenet bahem ma'arechet chashmalit or electronit b'midat ha'efshar matbilim otam kedin u'mamtinim ad sheyityavshu. Utensils that need to be immersed but have an electric or electronic component, one should immerse them according to the halacha when possible and wait the proper time for them to dry off. In fact, this suggestion is mentioned by many other contemporary halachic poskim as well. They explain that if one waits sufficient time for the appliance to dry, the appliance will nearly always work perfectly afterwards and not be ruined. I like that line there, nearly always work perfectly. I wouldn't do this. It's also worthwhile to note that according to Rav Moshe Feinstein, a toaster that is used only to make bread into toast is actually exempt from tevilah. Now this is a crazy chidush. I had to see this with my own eyes to believe it. He says here, drying bread, yivush hapat al yedei hatoaster, af al pi she'af lahargilin bazeh eno devar nachutz veruba da'alma v'rab achilot, af lahargilin bazeh hu pat ha'afuri kama shehu. He says here, drying bread using a toaster, which even for those who are accustomed to doing so, it is not critical, and the majority of people and the majority of meals, even for those who do use this, use baked bread in its normal form, should not be considered a utensil used for a meal. What he's saying is, most people are happy eating bread, so drying it to make it into a toaster for him was not a big deal. He didn't really consider it anything, and therefore wouldn't require mikveh. However, this idea of Rav Moshe is one of his bigger chidushim, or I should say a little out there, and was not the approach accepted by most poskim. And there's a whole collection, by the way, you can of Rav Moshe's shitot, which were a little bit out there. I mean, many of them are mainstream, but there is a whole section here of interesting Rav Moshe positions which didn't become mainstream. Well, that's one of them. Now let's talk about storage containers and jars. What's the halacha concerning metal or glass containers that one buys in the store that contain food such as canned vegetables or cookies? Must one remove all of the contents the minute they are opened? Even if that is not necessary, may one use such a container multiple times after the initial contents are finished? As in, can I reuse them? For example, how about reusing foil trays? Aluminum foil trays. Can I reuse those or not? Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach rules that it is unnecessary to remove all of the food immediately, and one may even eat directly from the utensil without tevilah. But if one wishes to reuse it, one should tovel it first, since reusing it gives it the status of a halachic utensil. Okay, so here he says, Nired le'echol mitoch hakeli, vadai chashi, sorry, hamishtamshut, ap al pichen, nired le'aniut da'ati demutar, mitrei ta'ameh. It seems that eating from the utensil is definitely considered using it, but even so, it seems in my humble opinion that it's omitted for two reasons. Number one, a sealed container which is sealed by a material that is not similar to a bottle cap, since it is unusable for anything as is, therefore, just as it is forbidden to open a sealed utensil on Shabbat, if he wishes to use the utensil afterward because it looks like he has fashioned a utensil on Shabbat. The same is true in our case, that it is considered as if the utensil has been fashioned by a Jew and is entirely exempt from immersion. But one should not be lenient based on this alone, since this is not entirely clear. Okay, this is an interesting thing about opening cans or breaking down cans. For Sfaradim, it's not an issue because we would never use it as a keli. For Ashkenazim, they're concerned that maybe you're making a kli. That's regarding Hilchot Shabbat. But on the flip side, by making a new kli, it would make it exempt from needing the mikveh. Number two, since one is not obligated to immediately remove the food from a utensil of a non-Jew, it is logical that the same is true here as well, that it is permitted to eat from the container, as he does not intend that it should remain a utensil used for meals, as he will throw it away as soon as he has finished eating it. It is therefore permitted to eat from it. According to the first reason given, perhaps even a utensil that is reused would not be required to be toveld, since the Jew transformed it into a new halachic utensil. But according to the second reason, since the main reason for exemption is that one intends to dispose of it, one who chooses not to dispose of it would be obligated to put it in the mikveh. Since Rav Shlomo Zalman does not wish to rely upon the first reason alone, it therefore seems that he would argue that reusing disposable utensils would require one to immerse them. Rav Moshe holds that one need not tovel it, even if one decided to reuse it. And this is something that a lot of people rely on when they want to reuse foil trays. As I said, if you wanted to reuse foil trays, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach would say no, but Rav Moshe here in source 33 says yes. And he says, we'll do the second paragraph. He writes here, it seems in my humble opinion, and I've told you this many times, humble opinion in halacha means this is the right position. They do not require immersion, just as the bottle becomes nullified to wine with regard to purchasing it with money of Masa Sheni, and he's going into something else. We're not going to go into his pilpul, but you just need to understand that bottom line position that one need not immerse it according to Rav Moshe, and this is not considered one of his chidushim, which is too far outside of the box. This one is one that many people like to use. Now, using utensils of others that have not been immersed. Now, this comes up a lot. I'm going to a friend, they keep kosher, but I don't know whether they put their things in the mikveh, or, you know what, I know they don't put their thing in the mikveh. Can I eat in their home, or is this an issue? Rav Avaji Yosef, Nacham Avaji, forbids using these utensils. He says here, one who visits the house of a friend and he knows for a fact that the friend has not immersed the dishes that require tevilah, it is forbidden for him to eat and drink using the dishes until the homeowner immerses them, since his primary usage in taking them is to use for eating and drinking. According to Sefer HaKashrut, one should make sure to use only utensils that are not obligated in tevilah, such as plastics, disposables, non-metals, non-glass, like wood, plastic, whatever, and that will help you. And Sefer HaKashrut says, "Hamitarech b'bayit shelo hotvilo bo klei goyim, yivakesh lagish lo b'kelim she'inam chayavim b'hatvilah, הגישו לו בכל זאת בכלים שאינם צבולים, רשאי לאכול את המוגש מתוך ידו או בעזרת מפית." And here is how he's going to do it. One who stays in a house where the utensils made by non-Jews have not been toveld, he should request that they serve him in utensils that have no obligation. If they nevertheless serve him using utensils that are, then he should eat off a napkin or use his hands. Now, Those are the more strict opinions. Rav Yaakov Ariel, former chief rabbi of Ramat Gan, however, has a different position. And he says here in source 36, and see the Sefer Tevilat Kelim, where he writes in the name of the Tshuvot Bet Avi, who inclines toward being lenient for a guest because a guest is not a borrower and is not a renter and has no responsibility over the keli. Apparently, his opinion is that only the owners or someone who has some element of ownership or responsibility are the ones who are forbidden to use the utensil that are not immersed. However, a guest who has no element of ownership or responsibility is exempt from the obligation. Okay, and that is the position which I recommend to those people who are in that situation. In practice, it would seem proper to say that a guest is not obligated in immersing the utensil on his own, and therefore, when he is anus, when he has no other way, he's in a pressing situation, he can rely on those that hold that he is not obligated to immerse the utensil, and he is permitted to use it. And this is the position, as I said before, that I recommend when, for example, people are going to family members, and you're not sure if they immerse in the mikveh, or things of that nature. For Shalom Bayit, it's much better to rely on these lenient positions. Or if you really want, you know what? Let's save on the washing up. Let's use disposables. But again, either way, I would say that this is a great position and a logical position to evolve any issues there with Shalom Bayit or causing offense to close friends and the like. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach also says this as well. So, and you can see that in source 37. So it's not just a leniency for modern Orthodox circles, it's something also in Haredi circles that one can be strict to. Now, let's say you're visiting a hotel in Israel or a restaurant, and you don't know whether they have, taken the kelim to the mikveh or not. Can you rely on that? And the Darkei Teshuvah says here, the custom is spread across the world that one may purchase drinks from a Jewish bartender who has not immersed his dishes, and one need not be concerned that there is a prohibition, because the one who pours it for him is exempt from the halacha of immersing them, since he only purchased them for the purpose of his business and his livelihood to give drinks to his customers. And we saw that before last week. When it's for business purposes, it doesn't require mikveh. And therefore, because of that, one would not need to do it if one is going to a hotel. The Shevet Sofer also rules leniently, though he links it specifically to glassware, for which the obligation of Tevilah is only midirabanan, is only rabbinic. You can see that there in source 39. In the Sefer HaKashrut cites the lenient opinion, but only in the form of Yesh Omrim, and says, כלים המשמשים להגשת מזון במקום המיועד ללקוחות או לאורחים בלבד, כגון בתי מלון, מסעודות או בתי קפה וכדומה, יש אומרים שמותרים בשימוש בלא טבילה. It says, for using customers or guests alone, such as hotels, restaurants, coffee houses, and the like, some say it's permitted to use the cups without tevilah. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach in the Minchat Shlomo does not accept the logic of those achronim and considers these utensils to be commercial utensils, but nevertheless writes that when one has no option of immersing them, he may use them without tevilah, similar to the position cited above when in a private home. And he says, השתמשות בכלים בבתי מלון בגדר החיוב להטביל, using utensils in hotel and the parameters of the obligation of tevilah. He says, יש להקל בזה, one can be lenient for this. Masha katabti la'el, that which I wrote earlier, that the prohibition of using them is only midirabanan, rabbinic. But in a hotel and similar place where they will not allow him to take it and immerse it, since he wants to eat and drink, it is permitted for him. However, even if we say that the prohibition of using it is only rabbinic, this is all when the user has no ability to immerse it when he comes to use it. But if he can, then he should. But as I said, most situations, especially in public settings, there's no way you're going to say, do you mind if I take the coffee cup to the mikveh and I'll bring it back? Not going to happen. So one does not need to worry about that. Some, though, are stringent, even in this case, as noted by the Sefer HaKashrut. And they say that one should not drink in these places in utensils that were not immersed. And this is a reason why many are careful to, one of the reasons, other than kashrut, why some are careful when they go to a coffee shop, why they will, the main reason is kashrut, but also for this reason, why they won't use a real cup. They'll ask for a disposable. In source 42 here, however, the opinion of our master, the Chazon Ish, was that one should not drink in these places in utensils that were not immersed. And this is also the opinion of Rav Moshe Feinstein, that it's forbidden to eat in a hotel or a simcha hall without tevilah, at least when it is absolutely clear that they were not toveld. Rav Moshe Feinstein's opinion was actually a bit more nuanced than how it is presented in the previous source. He distinguished between foods that must be eaten in dishes, such as soup, which cannot be eaten without a bowl, and utensils that are used for foods that one could potentially eat without a dish, such as a piece of fish. In the former, it would be forbidden to eat the food without tevilah, while in the latter, it is permitted to take the food out of the dish and eat it. And you can see that there in source 43 in all its detail. Final note for those who are interested, there are many helpful lists in English of which utensils require tevilah, including the following, and you can see these in the Star K, kashrut.com, the Chav K, Sefer HaKashrut, Sefer Tibet HaKelim. There's a lot going on there which you can read. And there we have our summary of all that we learned today. And what's left at the end of this class is an interesting question, further iyun, on something we talked about before, on whether a convert requires tevilat kelim on his or her own dishes. And I mentioned before, there's a long piece there where he says, strictly speaking, he recommends that it go to the mikveh afterwards. But as I said, my personal recommendation to people who have kept kashrut beforehand is that the kelim do need to go to the mikveh for that reason, but they do not require kashering. They don't need to go from a status of making sure that you can't say because the person wasn't Jewish beforehand, they weren't keeping kosher. No, we can still say they were keeping kosher, but yes, they would require mikveh. And that's it for tonight. Are there any questions?